Oh, hi! This week, we're gonna turn this long sleeve thummy hole sweatshirt with this unfinished crew neckline into a V-neck, which is something I've always wanted to do, always thought about doing, and then have never gotten around to it. So we're gonna make it happen today. Because I've also gotten requests for this over the years. As with last week's thumb hole request, just something that's been sitting on my to-do list for literal years, and I haven't gotten around to. So we're doing the things. And you'll all be proud of me, because this that I'm currently wearing, I made everything but the neckline. It's already hemmed and everything, as well as two other open neck thummy hole sweatshirts. Of course, I had to make myself more striped shit, and this is the other guy I made, also with thumb holes. I made all three of these with the exception of this neckline, and I know I'm turning this into a video, so I don't know if this one counts as me sewing just for myself, because I am using some of it for a work thing, but I spent the entire day on Monday just sewing and not filming anything, just listening to an audiobook on my, yes, iPod Classic that is still working, and just let myself enjoy sewing as a hobby. And something I had mentioned to my therapist, by the way, I did start therapy and it's glorious. I am really enjoying it. It's hard. Parts of it are really, really hard, but I've already seen so much growth and it feels great. But I said to her last week that I had this pile of fabric that I keep not getting around to and it's like haunting me. I think I even made a joke about this in last week's video. And she asked me, well, is it because it's gonna take too long for you to make all those and you can't allocate the hours to putting them together? I was like, no, I could get all three done in a day. And she had a shocked face. Not that I felt like she didn't believe me, but it was a statement I knew to be true, but is also something I certainly couldn't have done in previous years, get 3 sweatshirts done in a day. So I did kind of challenge myself, I guess, to be like, I know I can get 3 done in a day. Let's do that. Let's make that happen. Let ourselves prioritize sewing for ourselves. And yeah, I got everything except this neckline, which I left intentionally, done on Monday. And I'm really proud of myself for letting me do that. And now when I go to therapy after I'm done filming this, I get to be like, I did the thing that I was sad I wasn't doing. And here we are, feeling great about it. So enough of a peek into my brain as to why I'm doing this project. Let's just figure out how to make this into a V-neck. You know, opening it up and cutting this fabric here into a V is not going to be the hard part. It's figuring out how to make the collar band come to a point like this and have the nice finished edge on the inside. I think when I sew it on, I'm gonna have to do some weird pivoting stuff I have done before, and I'm very thankful that I have that experience in my head, because I think otherwise I'd probably run away from this project just for fear of not knowing how to do it. But I have built enough self-confidence over the years. I know this is doable and we're gonna figure out how to do it. So don't be afraid. Let's jump into this together. It is my instinct to fear the unknown. I've got the toolkit, literally and figuratively, to make this happen. So let's do the dang thing. And then even if this goes kind of clunky, next time we'll go smoother and won't be as scary. And that's the goal, ain't it? Okay, first things first with making a V-neck is I made this shirt from scratch, so it's not like I have to detach any collars, but you can obviously do this to a t-shirt as well. You'll have to find some type of complementary, perhaps intentionally contrasting fabric. So if you want to change an existing collar band, just unpick that from whatever your top is. But since I didn't even bother making one to then detach, we're just gonna go from here. I'm gonna take my little chalk pencil, but whatever kind of marking tool you want, preferably something that'll wash out. So I'll mark a little stopping point there. I think that's vaguely in the middle. I'm okay with the back being high because we're making the new neckband from scratch, so like you can make this whatever shape you want. Now I'm gonna take this one off, just swap out to one of my other ready-made sweatshirts. All right, and now that I'm comfortably back in something stripy, I'm gonna cut down from the shoulder seam since I'm not adjusting the back neckline at all, and with the shirt folded evenly in half like this, because as you can see, the chalk mark was not perfectly centered. And I'm just gonna cut a straight line down. I'm not gonna curve it at all, just going right to the bottom of the chalk point. And that's gonna get us our cute little V shape like this. So now we measure the neck hole. You can use a soft measuring tape, one of these rolly measury wheels, or a fancy flexi curve. Fucking love this thing. Okay, so I got 27.5 inches here. I wasn't stretching anything. Also, because this is a knit and I'm using the same fabric for the collar band, we have some wiggle room with this. Ooh, and I know I just said the number to you, but I forgot. With 27.5. is fine. So actually, before I even cut the neckband, I want to do a test run to see how to make the point look the way I want it to. So I'm going to grab some scrap of this fabric and do a little bit of a prototype, because I think I have it figured out, but I haven't actually walked myself through the process with my hands. So I'm going to do a little test run. What a shock. Who is she? Okay, so if you can't tell by my grinning currently, we figured it out. I took 2 strips of scrap fabric. I folded them in half, wrong sides together. I overlapped the ends at a 90-ish degree angle, just kind of eyeballing what I thought that the neckline was on my shirt. I guess I could have laid these on my shirt to find the exact angle, and that's probably what I'll do with the actual neckband when I cut it. So then I marked a line for me to cut along, and then very brazenly cut where I marked where I wasn't 100% sure what I was doing. And then I had these little V shapes, which is the part that was missing in my brain that I couldn't quite picture because I kept imagining straight ends to this or a different type of angle. So then I opened those edges together, stitched it right sides together. I did do a straight line and then keep my needle down and then pivot at that sharp angle and then stitch the rest. Then it was a little bit of a pain to like flatten the seams and then flip it over just because of the angle of everything. And then as you can tell by my very dorky clapping, this seemed to do the trick. And that looks like the middle of a V-neck shirt to me. I am so happy that it just took the one try. And this is what I cut away, but because it's a triangle, I'm not actually sure how to account for that in the measuring of the collar band, because the widest part of the triangle here is the top inner edge, which is going to be smaller anyway. So I don't think I'm going to add any seam allowance for this. I didn't do a perfect job with any of the sweatshirts that I've made so far, and I'm sure this one will be no different. So now that we figured this part out, I'm gonna go cut a 27.5 by 2.5 inch wide strip of fabric. Ooh, here she is, glamorous as ever. Bert has now joined us. He was napping on the couch before. He just refused to get up and was like, no thank you, it is not time for me to work yet. So he's just aggressively licking his paws, as always, under my desk. Hi, little gremlin. I love that stinky little idiot so much. Okay, so to make this into a full neckband, I'm gonna fold the whole thing, wrong sides together. I managed to get sawdust on here somehow. I'm gonna do the same kind of overlapping, cut right here, sew those ends together, then that'll give me a finished loop. Oh, the thing I totally forgot to mention before is when you have these edges sewn together, make sure you clip the middle bit or it's gonna look insane and won't do what you want it to do. Like this. Up to, but not through the stitches. I'm not gonna bother trimming these little bat ear things because I'm gonna serge this afterwards. I'm gonna pin both these seams so that they line up nice, and then I'm gonna baste the 2 layers together just so they're not flapping around everywhere when I go to attach it to the shirt, which will be the next step. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Getting it done. This feels really good. I am very excited to have figured this out. Oh, heck yeah. Eep. Okay, so now we're gonna attach this to the shirt. I think most of it is gonna be straightforward, but I think when we get to the point, it's gonna be something I've done before, but can seem tricky if you haven't tried it, but I promise it's not as scary as it seems. It just like didn't automatically compute in my brain the first time I did it that this was even an option for how to sew something into something else. But I promise if I can do it, you can do it. We're gonna get through this together. Before I do anything else, I'm gonna mark the back center point. So like I obviously know where the front point is because that's where we just attached things. I'm gonna put like a little knit back here so that I can line that up with the center back of the shirt here. And you can mark as many other points as you would like. Again, it's a knit, there's wiggle room. Ooh, you know what? I'm gonna grab my dress form, which I haven't used for a video in a very long time. Okay, here she is. She is nowhere near as tall as she needs to be, but we work with what we have, you know? Here's the little notch I marked at the center back. Here's my neckband. I'm gonna lay this on here. So I'm gonna line up those notches, toss a pin in there. So I'm gonna find that center front of the V right here. And actually I am gonna cut these little bat ears off because all of this is such dark fabric, it's a little tricky. So I'm gonna line up this center line of the collar band, making this little point here with that center point of the shirt that we cut. Line that up right there. I'm gonna put a pin 1/2 inch down because I'm using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. You're gonna mark that pin as far down as your seam allowance is. And then I'm gonna pick a side to do first. I think I'll just start on this side of the shirt and I'm gonna like rotate this point so this way I can lay the rest of the neckband along the opening of the shirt. So I'm gonna stitch from the back center point all the way around, all the way down to the front, but I'm gonna stop at that front center point. And then I'll show you how we're gonna pivot and start the rest of the stitching because it was confusing the first time I did it because I had just never done anything like that before. But it's not as complicated as it may feel when you're like trying to make sense of it. And then when you actually do it, it'll be like, oh, okay, yeah, this is definitely doable. I promise it's doable. So I did immediately change one thing, which was the side of the neckband I was doing because I realized one was gonna feed under my machine a lot easier. So just keep that in mind when you go to sew things about the direction it's going to be going when you're stitching it down in your machine, because one's going to be a way bigger pain in the ass than the other one. Also, the only scrap I had was going the less stretchy direction on the fabric, so I would urge you to make sure that your neckband is cut lengthwise along the stretchiest part. So like from selvage to selvage, having the length go that way, because you don't need as much stretch. Like widthwise, you need it this way. So that did make things a little bit tougher for me. I did have to do a little bit more easing and everything. Okay, as for the actual center front pivot, y'all ready? I'm building this up way too much. It's not that big of a deal. As you get to that center point, you're gonna keep stitching along that first edge until your needle is down in the center line of the neckband. So you want that pivoting stitch to be in that seam. Then I'm gonna lift the presser foot with my needle still down in the fabric, shift everything over. I'm making a point to flatten out the underneath layer so that there's no puckers showing up. And then it's just turning the corner on the neckband and starting down that next edge. This is the point where I lined up the other edge of the neckband. Oh, I did also flip the whole garment inside out because I didn't do that to start with, and I realized that was gonna make this part easier because there were a lot of MC Escher bullshit things trying to happen, and it broke my brain for a hot second, but we got there. And this is what that looks like now. So both the angles were able to meet. I didn't get any puckers. Oops, I missed trimming some of the threads. I did have to redo it because the center line was not lined up with the point of the shirt and it looked off kilter. So I went back and redid it and made super sure that the needle was down in that center seam. So if it doesn't go perfect the first time, it's totally fine. That's why our seam ripper is our friend, not our enemy. So the last thing I'm gonna do is serge this edge so it'll have a nice finished interior. But obviously if you don't have a serger, you don't have to. And then just so this lays nice and flat and it's not trying to like flip out on itself, I am gonna top stitch the seam allowance down to the bodice around the whole edge. And then we'll try this baby back on. I'm so excited. All right, and now the moment of truth. Well, hey, wouldn't you know it? That looks like a V-neck t-shirt. Feels a little bit off, and I wonder if it's that I did a bad job cutting things in the first place. But actually, I don't know, this is okay. What do y'all think? I really wish I had had enough fabric to cut the collar band on the widthwise thing, because I do see this like ness happening, kind of scrunchiness happening over here, and that would be laying a lot nicer if I didn't have to ease the neckband into the bodice hole. You know what I mean? But all in all, for just a plain navy shirt, I'm not mad at all about that. I have seen much worse looking things in stores, so I'm not gonna give myself a hard time with this one. Figuring out this point is like one of my favorite things I've done this whole month. And yeah, we're getting into proper fall here in New England, so I am very on board with having plenty of stuff to layer with, because I do have plenty of sweaters, but they're the kind of heavy duty dead of winter. It's mid-January. Your nose and your hands are cracked and bleeding part of the year. This is more of that transitional period, lightweight sweater, long sleeve shirt type territory, and I'm happy to have it. Y'all know me, I generally hate long sleeves, but there's a point in the year, especially if you're doing shit outside, like you have to have your arms covered. So having cozy but still kind of lightweight things so I don't feel like I'm suffocating, that brings me a lot of joy. So I hope this was helpful. I know plenty of you have talked about wanting to learn how to do V-necks before. I hope this made sense if you're gonna try it on your own. Not a perfect execution as anticipated because it was my first go, but all in all, pretty happy with things, and it's only gonna get better from here. So a huge monster-sized thank you to everyone over on my Patreon for giving me the time and opportunity and skill building access to get to spend time working on projects for myself and then learning how to do this stuff so that I can share it with y'all. Oh, and just in time, Bert has woken up to say goodbye to everybody. We will see you back here with another video next Friday. Thank you so much for hanging out. You can hide a lot of mistakes in a jersey.